Welcome back to Inside Politics. Our guest today, Larry Woods and Bill Phillips, both political analysts on the Republican and Democratic side, to talk about what happened Thursday night with the first hearing of the January 6th committee that's been looking into what happened with that takeover of the U.S. Capitol at that time. Larry, while obviously the committee was reporting to the public and particularly to voters, particularly perhaps to turn some Republicans who at least take a second thought at this, a second look at all this, it appears there was another smaller, much smaller audience, but maybe more important in some ways, and that's the people in the Justice Department, and more particularly Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, to be looking at this as to whether they ought to do more about looking at the higher level people. A lot of people have been indicted and convicted in a lot of cases who were involved directly at that, but the upper level, there's been some mixed messages out of the U.S. Attorney's Office. Do you think the presentation would have been impressive to Merrick Garland when he was looking at it last night?
I think it would have and probably did impress Merrick Garland, the Attorney General. And to give a full picture there, as a lawyer, Merrick Garland as a public official, the prosecutor, he could have 100 indictments coming against higher-ups and be working hard on them, and he's under a legal duty not to disclose that publicly and not to talk about it publicly because he's working on a criminal prosecution. So it's hard to know what Garland and his team of lawyers are really doing at this point. And if I were co-chair of that congressional committee House committee last night, yeah, I would have seen Garland as we need to make sure he's working on it aggressively hard, and therefore, Mr. Garland, pay attention. Look at all this evidence you need to find. Now,
Bill, the committee could, at the end of the day, decide to make a criminal referral to the U.S. Attorney to deal with this. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. The committee seems to be kind of, when you ask them about that, they seem to kind of waffle around. Do they not want to do that? Do they want Garland to take it on his own and they don't have to get put on the spot to ask that to happen?
Well, you've got a political overlay. You got the Attorney General who has a responsibility on the legal side, but he is in a Democrat administration. You've got a Democrat majority in the House, at least today, and so...
Well, when there's not a Democratic majority, there will not be a committee.
So they are, yeah, they're going to be very cautious about this. But and so I don't think you're going to hear too much until maybe that closing hearing.
Larry, what do you think they're going to? Did the committee decide to hold some of this back for the next hearings coming up because you want to keep people coming back? What do you think they're going to be putting more meat and potatoes or bones on meat of what they're talking about, these bones?
Yes, I think there's no question about it. They've taken hundreds of hours of depositions, all of which are held behind closed doors. No media, no public there. We saw the result of that last night with the clips from Bill Barr's testimony, Ivanka Trump's testimony, Miller's testimony, and others. We're going to see more clips like that from other parts of those depositions at every one of these televised hearings.
Bill, particularly the one thing that the committee brought up a couple times last night, didn't really present much direct evidence about this, either from the videos or from the clips from the deposition. They keep talking about this is a clear and present danger, not just a danger that came up in January and is now gone. What are they going to talk about in terms of what the threat is? That seems to me where it gets a lot more into the current 2020 midterm elections, 2022 midterm elections, or 2024. What are they going to say?
There's two things. One, it's heartbreaking that you go to the U.S. Capitol now and you can't go in. I was fortunate enough last month that I got a tour, and it was almost haunting in that there was nobody in there. It was just me and this tour guide who talked about the feeling they have towards the building now and such, and the monument for democracy. But they also have this, I do think that they are very concerned about the future and what could be happening at our establishments. And I kept thinking about Fort Sumter last night. I mean, it was an attack on the seat of our government.
So, Larry, what does the committee recommend we do? Do we change the way we go through the Senate and the Congress goes and certifies the election? Do we change the Electoral College? What do you do?
I'm not sure both parties can get together on how to change certification of the electoral votes, and therefore I question whether they can change it. Second, if they do that, Democrats or Republicans or bipartisan, they've got to make absolutely sure that the nation agrees on the changes, and that half of us don't leave a change thinking, oh, this is the first step in stealing the next election kind of thing. That's the poison that filters out from Trump's arguments about, stop the steal and this was a bogus election. The next 3 or 4 national elections, there are going to be significant numbers of people on both sides or the losing side, no matter who it is, that are going to complain and echo what Trump did. That's what we're going to have to live with for a while.
Bill, even what happened last night, almost every major network covered it except Fox News did not. They did put it on their business channel. In fact, for the last 2 hours last night, the Fox programming, which was Hannity and some other folks, they didn't even take commercial breaks. So that's interesting that Fox would lose money on that. Were they afraid their audience would go over and sample what else was going on the other networks?
I think some of their audience did go over to the other networks and see what's going on. Because everybody's curious, and so Fox, I think, comes out looking a little egotistical and also a little arrogant.
But Larry, if the numbers come out and Fox's numbers are strong, does that tell you that the public's not in the mood to want to hear a rehash of this, or even what could still be happening?
Well, that's true for a part of the Republic, the strong, loyal Fox audience. But I think Bill Phillips is right. As we hear more, as there's more talk this week about Ivanka Trump and Bill Barr, even the Fox audience is going to say, hey, I want to see this for myself. I don't believe it. I want to see it. And they're going to have to go to the other channels to see it.
Bill Phillips is our guest, along with Larry Woods. They're 2 political analysts analyzing what happened Thursday night with the January 6th committee, holding the first of what will be 6 public hearings, describing exactly what they found on what happened on that fateful day at the U.S. Capitol. Back to continue our conversation after this break.